Okay friends, we have 14 books to go through in this video, so get settled. Hello friends, I'm Rosa, welcome. So like I said, we have 14 books to go through right now. These are both books that I've talked about in yesterday's video and also Tuesday's video. However, there's also a couple of ones that I have not mentioned. Again, if you want to see that all fantasy series that I've started but not finished video, let me know. There's a couple of those books included in this one as well. But in general, we just have a lot of good books to talk about. So actually it's 15, it's not 14. Whoops. But we should better get started. So I hope you got yourself a nice snack, a nice drink. I don't because I forgot, but I hope you got yourself covered and let's get into it. So the first ones that I want to talk about are my not completely 5-star reads, but like close. And the very first one that we're talking about is Ace of Spades by Farita Bike. I don't really know how to pronounce the last name, but this is a young adult contemporary dark academia mystery thriller and it's awesome. I love this book. I loved this book when I read it in June and I still love it to this day. Kind of want to reread it and tab the heck out of it. But anyway, we follow our two lead characters whose names I've forgotten, but that's a theme throughout this video, so let's just not even try to pretend like we remember character names. Okay, we got these two people right here that we follow throughout the book. They go to a school. They're the only 2 black students on this school, which in itself is kind of weird. It is a school for, it's a private school in the US, so it's for richer people. And on the first day of their senior year, the head prefects are announced and they're both getting this title. However, shortly after this ceremony, if you will, things start to happen and this person with no face called Aces basically just makes life incredibly hard for these 2 students and their goal is to figure out who is Aces, and it's a lot. It's a whole lot. Okay, it's a lot. I had an amazing time reading this, trying to figure out what was going on, trying to be on the same page, like figuring it out before the characters did. I got very angry throughout this video as well because there was a lot of unfair treatment too. This is a book that also touches on racism, institutional racism, so be aware of that. I feel like it's probably quite healthy to read it as well for some of us. So that is Ace of Spades. I believe it's also a debut, so like congratulations. You did good, okay? You did good. Really enjoyable read, fast paced, but easy to read as well because it is also young adult, so yes. Then we have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, another dark academia read. This is adult fantasy, paranormal, mystery. It's a lot of things and I'm not entirely sure how to summarize this. We follow Alex, who is the sole survivor of a tragedy, but while being at the hospital she is contacted by, is it Harvard? It's Yale. Okay, contacted by someone working at Yale at this like undercover thing where they basically keep an eye on all the secret societies of Yale because they do a lot of magic and some of it is forbidden, so they kind of have to have this group to keep an eye on them. Alex is contacted by one of the people in this group so she can get a full ride to Yale if she works for them. And while being there, things happen. There's the mystery of one of the lead characters, like what happened there. One day a girl shows up dead and Alex is like, I can't leave this be. I need to figure out what happened. So that is what this whole book is about. It is confusing as heck to start out with. Just so you know, like you gotta pay attention. There's also an index at the end of the book, just so you know, because I was not aware and I feel like it would have helped me a lot if I'd known going into it, but I just did not check for whatever reason. So, but this was such an interesting read and I really cannot wait for the second book to come out. Whenever that's gonna happen, I have no idea, but we'll recommend this to basically everyone as long as you are aware of the trigger warnings because there's quite a lot for this one, and just be aware that it's definitely adult and not young adult, despite it being Leigh Bardugo, because you know she mainly writes young adult. But another note is also, I actually really enjoyed seeing this side of her instead of just Grisha. So yeah. And then the last one of the almost 5-star reads that I want to talk about is The Deal by L. Kennedy that I don't have a physical copy of, but I read it on Kindle. And this book is the first one in a series of companion novels called Off Campus. When I talked about this in my wrap-up at some point, I did mention that this was quite cliche, which is why I feel like I can't give it a full-on 5 stars. However, I enjoyed this so much. Like, I ate this book up. This was such a good book. But it's cliche because the guys are super cliche. They're all handsome, they're all fit, they're all hockey stars that get all the girls. But the banter, the chemistry in these books is just spot on. I don't know, it just really vibes with me. So, but for the first one, we follow Hannah and Garrett. Garrett's the hockey star. Hannah is, don't really remember, but there's a class that they're taking and Garrett is kind of failing it while Hannah was one of the only people in the class who actually got a good grade. So he's like, if I don't improve my grade somehow, I'm gonna lose my spot on the hockey team and I can't have that. So he's like, Hannah, you gotta help me and I'll help you with something in return. And Hannah's like, no, it's not gonna happen. I don't care. I'm not helping you. And you know, it goes back and forth a little bit, but they come up with a deal. So Hannah ends up helping Garrett with this grade, while Garrett has to help Hannah make her look more desirable because she is crushing on this guy as well at the school. And it's just a lot of fun. I'm not gonna get into it anymore, but it was just a lot of fun. Be aware that this is definitely new adult. It's quite smutty at times. It is contemporary romance, and it's just a good time if you are into those kinds of books. This is definite, like college romances, if you're into those books, you need to read this one, okay? You need to read it. And now we're getting into my 5-star reads of 2021. So we are gonna start out with, oh my gosh, I have so many, surprisingly many. I'm like, how did that happen? Okay, we're gonna start out with Empire the Vampire by J. Kristoff. This is adult, dark fantasy, paranormal, vampires. There's a lot in this one. Horror vibes occasionally as well. A lot of trigger warnings for this one, just be aware of that. And a lot of language, like a lot. There's a lot of very, very creative insults in this one, and I just loved it. In this book, we follow Gabriel de Leon, who is a silver saint. So he is half human, half monster. That's all I'm gonna say on that. And he's also the last silver saint. So he is essentially humanity's last hope a little bit. Unfortunately for us, he's imprisoned by the vampires. And the whole book kind of, or half the book is about Gabriel becoming a silver saint and like training with them and what led him to meet his there's a woman. And the other half is about the hunt for the Holy Grail that can basically end this kind of like I want to call it a curse, but it's not really been specified yet what it is, but the sun has not fully risen in this world somehow for like 27 years. So the Holy Grail is supposed to be the last answer to lifting that curse. I don't know. So the other half is about finding this Holy Grail. It's very nice because you kind of change timelines. Like you weave through the 2 different timelines. It works in a way that's really well. Gabriel, while he's in prison, is basically telling his story while a vampire that he's talking to is writing it down. So you get a few comments here and there as well from like now, except it's not now, but you get what I mean. And it just works really well. And I enjoyed this so much. I cannot wait for the sequel to come out at some point. Has it even been announced? I don't know. I need to check. Actually, I need to check. It hasn't. Oh my gosh, that sucks. Okay, but I need the sequel ASAP, please, because this was amazing. I had such a good time reading this, and it took me ages to go through it because I was savoring every single word in this book. So, good times, a lot of language, a lot of trigger warnings, but good times nonetheless. And then we're talking about one that I did mention in Tuesday's video, and that is specifically the 3rd book in the Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. So this is Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Prince, and then lastly Clockwork Princess. And this one was my 5-star read out of the 3. I enjoyed this so much. These are a part of the Shadowhunter universe. So if you're not familiar with Shadowhunters, I'm just gonna quickly try to explain them to you, but they are essentially warriors that defend us mundanes from the secret world that is filled with vampires and demons and fae and warlocks and, you know, whatever else that could kill us, basically. Paranormal things that could kill us. She has a couple of different series with them. This one is her 2nd one, and it takes place in 1876 or something like that. 1878. And we follow Tessa, who has taken off to London. She's from New York, taken off to London because she got a weird letter from her brother and she's very worried and she needs to find him. However, on arrival, she's also taken prisoner and basically forced to explore this ability that it turns out that she has by these two people until she is freed by our Shadow Hunter pals Jem and Will. And that's all I'm gonna say. There's a lot going on in this. It's a nice mix of urban fantasy, historical fiction, romance. There's some sci-fi aspects to this as well as some steampunk. And there's just a whole lot going on. They're young adult. It's the best, I just wanna say, okay. The reason that this is on this list is because this is the best love triangle that I've ever read. But at the same time, it's not just about romance. There's a lot of action in these. If you've read any Shadowhunter books, they are usually very fast-paced as well, I would say at least. It's like it slows down a little bit in these ones, but it's worth it. Okay, it's worth it. And this made me tear up as well because, you know, stuff happens and that's all I'm gonna say. So I had a good time reading these, teary-eyed or not. It was a good time, so yes. And then we're talking about another one that I don't think I've mentioned yet, which is, well, I know that I haven't because it's an adult contemporary romance and it's the Spanish love Deception. I cannot for the life of me. Infernal Decession. What is this? Anyway, The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. And this is kind of cliche too, but I had such a good time. Like, the lead man is also very cliche. He's way too perfect. But I just had such a good time reading this book. And that's honestly the most important thing, to me at least. It doesn't all have to be super original or anything, you know, it just has to make you feel things and make you have a good time. Or make you have a good time. Because not all of these books make me have a good time. I can promise you that. Anyway, in this book we follow Catalina, who is from Spain. She has moved to New York where she's kind of making a name for herself working, I think she's an engineer or something. I don't remember. Maybe she works in tech business. It's not important. But, well, maybe, no. At this company though, she has a colleague called Aaron Blackford and the two of them don't really get along that well. Elena has definitely tried to make it work, but it's just like he's not really biting. So you could say they're enemies, if you will. Yeah. However, one day Catalina receives a letter from her sister, still in Spain, that says that she's going to be married and she really hopes that Catalina will be at the wedding. And Catalina does not want to go without a date because she does not want to deal with all the pity that will come from her family for her being single after something that happened in Spain before she left to New York. So she sets out to find a date that she can bring to the wedding. And unfortunately for her, the only person that's available is Aaron. So, you know, there's a little fake dating in there, enemies to lovers. It's very tropey, like this is extremely tropey, but I had such a good time with it. I just loved this to bits. I want to reread it, like also quite a thick one for a contemporary romance, but I'm okay with that. And this is definitely adult, so just be aware of that, but good times. Lots of good times. Next up, I feel like we're breezing through this. Or maybe we're not. I don't know, it's fine. But next up, we're gonna talk about A Court of Mist and Fury, also known as Akkomath, by Sarah J. Maas. This is the second book in the ACOTAR series. I've talked about the ACOTAR series quite a lot, I feel, on the channel, but I read these books back in July or something for the first time. I've had them for 5 years, but I read them for the first time in July, and I am kind of still hating on myself for not reading them sooner because I loved them so much. This is definitely my favorite one out of the books, although I would say A Court of Silver Flames is definitely also high on the list. I just didn't want to include two in the same series here when it's not a 5-star, but close. Anyway, even though I'm sure most of you have heard about ACOTAR, I'm still gonna talk about it. So we follow Feyre, who lives with her father and her 2 sisters in a smaller cottage. They're not really well off, they're not well off at all, so she hunts a lot to make sure that they can get food on the table in the evening. When I say not really well off, I mean they're poor, like they really struggle, so she has to hunt for them to actually eat. But the woods that she hunts in are dangerous and filled with fae and wolves, and one day she comes across a wolf that she ends up killing, but then this monster turns up at the cottage and takes her away to the fairy courts, or the Fae realm. And there's a lot of stuff that happens after that. It's really hard to, with this one because the first book is so different from the rest. Like, so different. So it's very hard to summarize them in a way that brings justice to the rest of the books. But just know that the first one is very different from all the other books. The first one is also a retelling, the rest are not. But these are definitely, they have a special place in my heart because of the characters. I just really love the characters in them. And they're also new adult fantasy, but like in a well-built world as well. So I want to say almost high fantasy. They're also very romancy, and it touches on a lot of the series, touches on a lot of mental health problems, issues. So but in a good way, according to my opinion at least. I feel like readers are very split on that, but I like how she touches on various mental health issues. So yeah, very lovable story though, so would highly recommend, and I really want to reread them soon as well. We'll see when that happens. And then we are talking about a book that I also talked about yesterday, which is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is an adult Greek mythology retelling, sort of romance, coming out story, also coming of age story. There's a lot, and it's heartbreaking, and it's brutal, and very touching and beautiful. So it's a lot of things. We follow Patroclus, who is an exiled prince. He is living on this island, I think, with Achilles, Achilles' dad. Achilles is a half god, by the way. So his dad is human, his mom is a god. And they live among all these boys that are there for one or another reason. Achilles and Patroclus becomes friends as kids, and then they kind of grow older and turn into something else until Achilles is called off to war. And that's all I'm gonna say. So just know that this is, like I said, it's brutal, but it's very, very beautiful. And have tissues ready when you go into it. That's all. And then I want to talk about one that I read very recently, also Sarah J. Maas, and it's House of Earth and Blood. The first one in the Crescent City, possibly trilogy or series. I don't really know. The second one is coming out in February, and I'm looking forward to it so much. This is adult urban fantasy? Yeah. Romance, magic, various paranormal creatures, like a lot. If you've ever read fantasy, whatever creatures that you can think of will probably be in this world. But we follow Bryce Quinlan, who is a bit of a party girl, and she has this little group of friends that she just loves with her whole heart. When Bryce loves something, she like does it fully, you know? So she's that kind of person. But then one day when Bryce comes home, she finds her friends dead. The guy who was suspected of doing this is sent off to prison. However, a couple of years later, the murders pick up again while this guy is still in prison, and Bryce is pulled in to kind of help with the investigation because she might have a different outlook on things compared to the people that have been working on the case so far. And she's also forced to kind of forced to work with a fallen angel called Hunt, who has his own little background story that I'm not gonna go into, but this is amazing. I love this. I read it in a day. It's 800 pages, so I feel like you can't actually see that it's 800 pages. I swear it's 800 pages. So that says a lot. I read this in one day. It was a lot, but I had a good time. I have a problem with Sarah J. Maas books because I cannot put them down. For the life of me, I cannot stop reading once I pick them up, and this was one of those situations. But it's so good. Would recommend this. Highly recommend this. And it also made me feel a lot of things, so yes. And then we are... Oh gosh, that really just dug into my palm. Ouch. Okay. But let's move on. The next one we are talking about, I also mentioned in yesterday's video, but that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is adult fantasy, historical fiction, magic, and also romance. So in this book, we follow Celia and Marco, who are both magicians, and they're kind of in a duel, which is very abstract. And continues to be abstract for a very long time in the book. If it's ever fully explained, I don't really know. I still don't understand what this duel is. It's fine. All you need to know is that they're dueling, yes. And we also follow the creation of the Night Circus, which is a circus that arrives at night, and by dawn, it's gone again. And I feel like that's basically all I can say. This is very beautifully written. It's very atmospheric. It's very quotable too. I found out going through the quotes on Goodreads. So many good quotes from this book, like so many. This is beautiful. If you like slow-paced books, more atmospheric reads, not fast-paced, like lots of plot in there, I would definitely recommend this to you. But if you're definitely not, and you're mostly or only interested in fast-paced, don't, just leave it be. Anywho, we have 4 more books to talk about, although 2 of them are kind of in the same series, duology, but I had to include them because they're both 5 stars for me. So let's get to it. And they are Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I'm gonna put this one down because I get confused. These are young adult, adventure-y, heisty, romance, friendships, banter, good characters, magic, did I mention fantasy? There are a lot of things. Magic, witch hunters, sharpshooters, assassins, crime lords. My gosh, there is so much. World building, magical system. Are you convinced yet? Because if not, read these books, okay? In them though, we follow the crows. There's 6 of them, by the way, just in case you were wondering. Well, at least we follow 6 of them. So in these books, the first one, I'm not going to tell you about the second one, but the first one, they are hired to go to this place in the northern Grisha world called Fierta, where they have to free a prisoner. The plot sounds so simple, but trust me, it's effective, okay? It's very effective. These characters are so charming. I wouldn't say that it's a character-driven story more than the plot-driven story. It's just that the plot seems so simple. Now that I've said it, I'm surprised. But there's a lot to it. So I don't know how else to convince you that you need to read these books. Just do it, okay? You need to, because 5 stars, both of them. This one is actually better than this one, so you cannot go wrong with these books, okay? Amazing stories, amazing heist, amazing characters. Would defend this for the rest of my life. They are now my babies, and I also want to reread them at some point. Can't continue rereading books when I'm gonna read all the books behind me that I have not read yet. Also taking place in the Grisha-verse, we have Rule of Wolves. Oh yeah, also by Lee Bardugo. I forgot to say. I was so excited to talk about the crows. I'm sorry, Lee. Anyway, and this is kind of the book that wraps up the Grisha-verse. So while you can read these 2 on their own without having read Shadow and Bone, the trilogy, I would highly recommend that you read the Shadow and Bone trilogy before you go into this one in King of Scars, because otherwise it's just not gonna make a lot of sense. There are things happening in this duology that is a direct effect of stuff that happens in the Shadow and Bone trilogy. So 2 different series, but connected nonetheless. And I am a sucker for the main character in this duology. Just like most of the book community on both Instagram and probably also TikTok and probably also YouTube, Nikolai is amazing. We love him. We stan. Anywho, these are young adult fantasy, magic, romance, tears, and epicness. So in these 2 we follow Nikolai, who is the Prince of Ravka. Something happens to Nikolai in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and what this duology is about is basically figuring out how to fix what happened to him in that trilogy. So that's why I say you should probably read it before you go into this, because otherwise it's just gonna be weird. We also follow Zoya, but I'm not gonna talk about her storyline. And we also follow Nina, who is from Six of Crows. So maybe you should read Six of Crows too. And even if you don't, like, still do it, okay? Still read Six of Crows, yes. I personally felt like this was the perfect way to wrap up the Grisha-verse, even if it's definitely a bit fan service-y, if you will. Like, did we need this duology? Did we need various things that happen in this book or these books? No, but am I happy as someone who really loved those books? Am I happy to see it happening? Yes. Am I making any sense right now if you've not read them? No. I'm aware of it though. But this was epic. This was big. There was a lot of happening. There were things happening that touched me and made me feel things, and for that reason I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5. So you gotta have to do a lot of pre-work to get to this one though, but I promise you it's worth it, okay? And the last book that I'm talking about today is also one that I mentioned in Tuesday's video. So it is Thunderhead, which is the second one in the Arc of Scythe trilogy, and it's by Neil Shusterman. These are young adult science fiction, dystopia, death, with just like a sprinkle of romance in there too. And they are complicated. You have to pay so much attention while reading these books. You know those series that you can have running in the background that you kind of just you can keep track of what's happening without actually watching. And then those series that you need to basically see what's happening when they're not talking to know exactly what's going on. This is the latter. But in the Arc of a Scythe trilogy, let me talk about the first one at least. We follow two characters, Rowan and Citra, who are scythe apprentices. And scythes are, since we are in a future version of our world, where we've basically overcome sickness and death and almost anything that could kill us, we've overcome it. We're also dealing with overpopulation. And as a fix to that, we have this group called scythes that glean people, aka kill them, to keep the population down. So we follow them as they are apprentices and stuff happens. This book was a 5-star for me because, and I'm not gonna spoil anything, don't worry, but the ending, I was like, whoa, what? How? I mean, I know how because you wrote it down on the paper and I read it, but then I didn't think about it, and then suddenly it became important and I'm like, how did I not see it coming even though you basically told me? That's the ending of both this scythe and also the toll, so just read everything. Everything just starts to come together at some point and you're like, I did not see that coming at all. It was right in front of my nose and I did not see that coming at all. And for that I just really love them. Like, I was literally like, I think I just closed the book and was like, whoa. Like, genuinely just sat there like, whoa. That's all I had to say. They were so good, but you definitely gotta put some time and work into these because they can be a bit on the heavier side for young adults, so just be aware of that. So good though, so good. And that is all the books. It was actually 14 books, not 15. I miscounted twice. I'm sorry. But I hope you enjoyed this video anyway, and if there are any other wrap-up videos that you'd like to see from me, definitely let me know. If there are any other videos that aren't wrap-up videos you'd also like to see, also let me know. If you enjoyed this one, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Also, if you're new to the channel and you want to hang out with me and talk about books, nerd out, and just be nerds together with both me and everyone in the comments, definitely consider hitting the subscribe button. But that is all. My hand hurts so much from holding these books. I gotta find a different way than doing like this because the corners are just like digging into my palm. Side note. Anyway, life is so hard. Am I right? Okay, we're fine. But I hope you enjoyed this video. So yeah, that's all. And I will see you in the next one. Bye!